When Jake checked her phone at 2 in the morning, he found messages from 4 different men. 3 of them she'd slept with, while living in his apartment, while he was paying for everything. He was 25 years old. He thought he was being a good person. He thought he was helping someone he cared about get back on their feet. But he wasn't helping her. He was being used. This is the story of how Jake let someone into his life who had no intention of being faithful, honest, or even grateful, and how it almost broke him. Wait, it gets worse. What I found next shocked me even more. But before I tell you, comment below, have you ever caught someone hiding something on their phone? Her name was Mia. They met through mutual friends at a house party back in October. She was fun, outgoing, and honestly, really attractive. They hit it off immediately. They started talking every day. Within 2 weeks, they went on their first real date, dinner at this Italian place downtown, then drinks after. Everything felt natural. But about 3 weeks in, she told him something that made him pause. She admitted her body count was 27. 27. At 24 years old. Jake wasn't there to judge anyone's past, but that number made him hesitate. Not because of morality, but because of what it usually signals. Someone who hasn't been looking for something serious. But then she reassured him. She told him she was done with that lifestyle, that she didn't do hookups anymore, and that she wanted a real relationship. She wanted something stable, and he believed her. He didn't think she was marriage material, not yet anyway, but they seemed compatible. They had chemistry, they made each other laugh, so he gave it a shot. For the first 2 months, everything was great. But then, about 3 months in, things started to shift. Mia told him she was getting evicted from her apartment. She'd been living off a trust fund her grandparents left her, and she'd blown through the entire thing. Rent, partying, online shopping, impulse trips, it was all gone. She worked a minimum wage job at a retail store, barely pulling in enough to cover her phone bill and vape cartridges. She told Jake she had nowhere to go. Now, under normal circumstances, Jake would never move in with someone after just 3 months. That's way too fast, but she was desperate, and he cared about her, so he made an exception. He offered to let her stay with him for a while, just until she figured things out. She could pay him rent once she got back on her feet. She moved in the following weekend. At first, it seemed fine. She'd come home from work, they'd cook dinner together, watch movies. It felt domestic. It felt like progress. But then Jake started noticing patterns. Most nights, she'd come home and immediately start drinking. A few beers, then a few more. She'd smoke weed on the balcony, vape inside even though he asked her not to, and spend hours scrolling TikTok in bed. She wasn't looking for other jobs. She wasn't saving money. She wasn't trying to improve her situation. She was coasting. And Jake started feeling less like a boyfriend and more like a safety net. If you're still watching, you already know something is seriously wrong, so comment "run" if you think Jake should leave her immediately. In the last few weeks, Mia started acting different. She was distant, distracted. She'd be on her phone constantly, but the second Jake walked into the room, she'd lock the screen. She started going out more. She'd tell him she was hanging with coworkers or meeting up with an old friend. He didn't think much of it at first. He's not a controlling person. He trusted her. But then 2 nights ago, everything unraveled. It was a Wednesday. She told him she was going out with a girlfriend from work and would be home by 10. Midnight came. No text. 1 in the morning, nothing. At 2:15 in the morning, Jake heard the front door open. He asked her where she'd been. She told him she was with Sarah, her coworker. When he pointed out she'd been gone for over 4 hours, she got defensive. She said they'd lost track of time and asked why he was interrogating her. Something in her tone felt wrong. She was evasive, guarded, and for the first time in their entire relationship, Jake asked to see her phone. She asked him why. He told her something didn't feel right. She accused him of not trusting her. He asked again, more firmly this time. She hesitated. For a long, uncomfortable moment, she just stared at him. Then she handed it over. Jake opened her messages, and his stomach dropped. There were 4 conversations, 4 different guys. Guy number 1 was someone Jake knew about, an old friend with benefits she'd told him about early on. He'd specifically told her he wasn't comfortable with her staying in contact with him. But there they were, messages from last week, flirty, suggestive, and then confirmation they'd met up. Guy number 2 was listed as new landlord in her contacts. But when Jake scrolled up, he saw the messages started on Tinder. She'd matched with him 2 weeks ago. They'd been texting daily, making plans. Guy number 3 was her boss, at her retail job. The messages were explicit. She'd hooked up with him in the back stockroom after a closing shift. Guy number 4 was a Tinder match from 2 days ago. She'd met him Monday night, the same night she said she was working late. They'd hooked up in his car. Jake sat there, phone in his hand, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath him. He asked her what this was, what all of this meant. She said nothing. He asked again, louder this time, demanding an answer. Still, she stayed silent. She didn't apologize, she didn't cry, she didn't even try to explain. Instead, she walked to the balcony, lit a joint, and got extremely high to avoid the conversation. Jake followed her outside. He confronted her directly. He told her she'd been seeing 4 guys while living with him. She stared at her phone and muttered that it was complicated. Jake reminded her they lived together, that they'd agreed they wanted something serious. That's when she said it, the words that would cut deeper than anything else. She told him they'd never said they were exclusive. That sentence hit Jake like a punch to the chest. He reminded her they'd been together for 5 months, that she lived in his apartment. She countered by saying they'd never used the words boyfriend and girlfriend. Technically, she was right. They'd never officially used those labels, but they'd agreed early on that neither of them did casual hookups anymore, that they wanted something real. They were living together, sharing a bed, sharing a life. How was that not exclusive? Jake told her she needed to leave. She called one of her guy friends to help her pack, not one of the guys she'd cheated with, but someone else from her circle. While they were loading boxes into his car, the friend pulled Jake aside. He told Jake he didn't think Mia was trying to hurt him, that they were never really official, you know. Jake reminded him they'd lived together. The friend shrugged and said that yeah, but Mia didn't think Jake was her boyfriend. Jake couldn't even respond. She packed everything in under an hour, took her clothes, her vapes, her half-empty bottles of cheap wine, and then she took the cat. Her black cat that Jake had been feeding, cleaning the litter box for, playing with every night. He'd grown attached to that cat, but she took him anyway. She didn't say thank you for letting her live rent-free for 2 months. She didn't apologize for cheating. She didn't even look at Jake when she left. For 48 hours after she left, Jake couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He felt physically sick. His friends and family all told him he made the right call, that she was using him, that he dodged a bullet, and logically he knew that. But emotionally, he still felt like he'd been cheated on, because in his mind they were together. They were building something, but in her mind, he was just a place to crash while she kept her options open. A week later, Jake found out through a mutual friend that she'd moved in with one of the guys she'd been seeing, the Tinder landlord. She went from his apartment to the next guy's without missing a beat. Looking back, the red flags were there from the beginning. The high body count wasn't the problem. It was the pattern. Someone who's had 27 partners by age 24 and still doesn't know what they want. That's not bad luck. That's a lifestyle. The trust fund running out wasn't the problem. It was the lack of responsibility. Blowing through thousands of dollars with no plan, no savings, no backup. The drinking and weed weren't the problem. It was the avoidance. Every time life got hard, she checked out. And Jake ignored all of it because he wanted to believe she'd changed. But people don't change just because you give them a safe place to land. They change when they decide to. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. Never ignore the red flags just because you love someone. If you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe because I post real relationship stories like this every week. It's been a month now. Jake is sleeping better, eating again. His apartment feels like his again. He doesn't hate her. He just feels sad. Sad that he gave so much to someone who gave so little back. But he learned something important. Being kind doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. If you've ever been in a situation like this, where you ignored the red flags because you wanted to believe in someone, drop a comment below. Share your story. And if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories like this. Thanks for watching.